Hello, my brother. Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Where have all the male mentors gone? This is a question that rang throughout my mind every morning over the last 2 weeks as I was transcribing notes from King Warrior Magician Lover by Robert Moore. It took me 2 weeks to transcribe my notes, by the way. I have 26 pages, no joke, 26 pages worth of notes from that book. And I do have this desire to do like a whole podcast series on breaking down the King Warrior Magician Lover archetypes for you guys. So that's going to be coming at some point. Believe it's going to happen. But one of the key problems that Robert Moore constantly talks about is how we are infants running around in adult male bodies. When we talk about the patriarchy, or when people talk about the patriarchy or toxic masculinity, it's really, they're pointing to young boys and grown men that are acting out in childish ways who haven't learned how to become men. And one of the biggest reasons that that happens in our society is because we have lost all connection to ritual processes, rites of passage, initiation rituals, to move from boyhood into manhood. And one of the most critical things that's missing are connections to wiser elders. A young 5-year-old boy having connection to a 15-year-old boy, to a 25-year-old man, to a 65-year-old man, a wise elder who has lived life, that can pass down life experiences, who has done the inner work, who can see clearly, who can help all of those younger men evolve. We don't have that in this Western society, the one that I live in and operate in, and that many of you, our listeners, live and operate in. I mean, just think about for a moment, if you were to look up at the men that are older than you, do you have 2, 3, 4, or 5 wise elders, men that have lived a life that you would be proud to live, that you look up to, that you admire, that you have connection with in one way, shape, or form, where they're passing down their wisdom to you? Many of us would be lucky to have one man like that. You know, this conversation was prompted by not only reading the book King Warrior Magician Lover, but I had a chance to hear from an old high school buddy of mine who I probably haven't seen in over a decade. And he reached out because he's been reading some of my emails and listening to some of the episodes of this podcast. And it's my boy, Aaron Schrager. And I have permission to read a part of this email that he sent to me. He said, you know, Dom, at some point after the age of 40, I accepted that mentors and leaders may not be in the cards for me ever since Doug Parcells may have been the last one. Rip Coach P. Now, Doug Parcells, if you listen to an episode that I did months ago, Doug Parcells was our high school football coach. And he's the brother of the legendary Bill Parcells. And Doug served as a mentor and like a leader of men for a lot of guys on the team. I didn't have that kind of relationship with Doug, but it sounds like Aaron did. And the thing that saddens me is that Aaron says that over the age of 40, I accepted that mentors and leaders may not be in the cards for me. I mean, that's sad to me that a man in his 40s, which as Carl Jung would say, Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, psychiatrist, says that at the age of 40 and 50, this is where men are going through the most dramatic changes of our lives. As Jung points out, many men in their 20s and 30s are going out trying to make something of themselves in this world, right? Like a singular focus on becoming successful or finding love and building a family and going out there making something of himself. And then once all of that happens, certain things start to stabilize in the 40s and 50s, and we start asking deeper questions about, what do I want this life to be about? Who am I? Am I living my fullest potential? Am I even doing what I like to do, or am I following some default script? And these are really deep existential questions that we shouldn't be expected to answer alone, on our own. And yet, that's exactly what so many of us do. You know, I'm fortunate, as I look around at the men in my life, I'm fortunate to say that I'm surrounded by no shortage of men who are doing deep inner work. I have a Monday night men's group where there's 9 of us. We get together every single Monday for the past 2 years. I'm the oldest guy in the group at the age of 41. The youngest guys in the group are somewhere in their younger 30s. but I consider us to be relatively same in age. The two male coaches that I've had over the last 7 years, John O'Connor, who's been a guest on the show multiple times. I worked with him for 3 years. He's about 4 or 5 years older than me. David Waldis, who we just had on the show, who I've been working with for the past 2 years, he's 6 or 7 years older than me. So we're all about the same age. And these men have been extraordinary guides in my life. But where are the wise elders? Right? Like, where are the guys who are decades ahead, who I can look up to and admire? The guys who have done decades worth more of inner work than I have, who can show me things and see things in me that there's no possible way that I could because of the path that they've walked many years before me. I mean, at 41 years of age, I feel like I've lived a lot of life. I know I have many years left. 41 years is a lot of life, but I can't even imagine someone else who has an extra 30 years of life and wisdom and experience, 30 extra years of doing inner work that I could look up to and ask the deeper questions. For that person to see me and point in a direction that I can't see myself. I mean, how amazing would that be? And yet, I don't have that. Most men don't have that. Where have all the male mentors gone? Where are our wise elders? And when you read anything by Carl Jung or anything by Robert Moore or anything by Robert Bly, any of the people who have done work in the men's work space, they all look at the indigenous cultures and tribal cultures. And there is a heavy emphasis. It's not emphasis, it's not even the right word. It's just like embedded into the culture where there is a system of mentorship from the youngest of ages to the wise elders in the tribe. It's just a no-brainer that you would learn from that lineage. And it got me thinking that really there was only one time in my life where I have been part of a system where there was a wise elder thoughtfully placed in a container of younger men, where his exact role was to provide leadership and healthy masculinity to those of us who were coming of age. And it was when I went to the University of Richmond. I'm a Richmond Spider. And we had at the University of Richmond what was called a coordinate system. We were a co-ed campus, but on the one side of campus, men lived. On the other side of campus, women lived. They were called West Hampton College. We were called Richmond College. It dated back to how the universities or colleges were formed. And we had a student government association where the dean of Richmond College, Dean Richard Mateer, would sit in on every single one of our student government association meetings and be our wise elder. And he would very rarely, I can look back on this now and I can't believe how masterful he was. I didn't fully appreciate his role in helping me become a healthy masculine man because he did so little talking in these meetings. It was just his mere presence. Like, Richard Mateer was the guy who commanded your respect, who you feared, but also knew that he loved you. Like just nailed all of those things, right? So his presence made you step up immediately. Like, he held you to a higher standard without ever opening his mouth. And he would sit in on these student government association meetings quietly. I could see him right now, legs crossed, fully engaged in every stupid word that we had to say, as if it were the most important thing in the world that we were talking about. And some of the lessons that he taught us seemed small at the time, but I look back on them and I realize how powerful they were. For example, we would always refer to each other as boys. And Dean Mateer would always step in and say, "You are men now. You were boys in high school. Many of you are already the age of 18 or older. You are no longer boys. You are men. Men act like men. Keep referring to yourself as boys and others as boys, and you will show up as boys. But here, we are men." And he would just say those little things for just moments that would cut through the crap and then immediately raise the standard. 60 seconds of his interjection. And then we knew, like we would catch ourselves because his presence was so powerful. And yet at the same time, he allowed us to have our meetings. He allowed us to debate and discuss. Many times we would come to him for guidance and he'd be like, you guys got to figure that stuff out yourself. And it was only every so often when he felt like there was leadership that was needed, like every time a new class of freshmen would come in on the Student Government Association. And I was a 4-year student government senator, so I had a chance to be there all 4 years. Every year, the freshman class would come in wanting to make changes to the campus, the same changes that classes before had tried and failed at. Whether it was like getting air conditioning in all of the dorms instead of just like one of the dorms, or something potentially trivial. And a freshman senator would propose, hey, I want to, go get air conditioning in these dorms. And a senior senator would shoot him down and say, we've tried that for years. It's never going to happen. And Dean Mateer would step in and he would say, just because you failed at getting that done doesn't mean that this class will fail at getting that done. We must welcome the fresh ideas of our younger men who haven't been polluted with the way things have been done in the past. And he said that every single year, because every single year we would go through the same problem, right? Where like new ideas would come in, some other grizzled old veteran would come in and shut it down. That lesson has stayed with me for my entire life. I brought that into the business world where I could see stodgy old people who had built 20, 30, 40-year careers who didn't like change or had been worn down and beaten down by shutting down all of our new ideas because we didn't know how the way of the world, instead of stoking the flames of that youthful exuberance and guiding and saying, hey, like here's how we failed, but maybe you see something new, go get it, versus shutting it down because you failed at it. And that helped me to become a better leader when I became older and I became more senior in the ranks of my professional career. That has stayed with me today, right now, as I have opportunities to mentor younger people who are either in college or who are younger millennials. The youthful exuberance that they bring, I stoke the flames and guide where I can. Having Dean Mateer as a wise elder in a group of, 25, 18 to 22-year-olds, the extraordinary impact of his energy, of his leadership, of his presence, raised all of us. And he amplified like who we were as men, and we've gone out in the world as different, better, bigger leaders just because of his presence. And that doesn't exist in the corporate world. That doesn't exist in most businesses. That doesn't exist in most of our societies. We need more of that. And one of the things that I'm committing to as I'm walking this path over these next 10 years of helping to wake up 10 million men to get on the path of doing inner work is to establish a structure where we are all learning from the wise elders. I want wise elders in this community that I can look up to. I don't want to be the top dog because I'm fucking 41 years old. There are guys who have decades and decades more of experience who can teach us. I want to be an influential voice, but fuck if I know what the hell I'm doing all the time. We need to be able to look up. We also need to be able to look down and pass our gifts along as well. So right now, I'm contemplating 3 questions to attract like that male mentor in my life, the wise elder in my life, which is, number 1, what is the guidance that I seek? What is the guidance that I seek from a wise elder? I'm only starting to contemplate this right now. Number 2, how can I be a model mentee? Like what can I do to put myself in a position to be like the model mentee, to attract like that wise elder that just is a perfect fit, that is just like a wonderful match. Like he gets as much energy from mentoring me as I get from being mentored by him, right? Like I've noticed, I know as being a coach and being a leader of other men that my clients, my mentees get the absolute best of me when they show up the the best version of themselves. They will get an inordinate amount of my energy and attention when they're showing up as a sponge, ready to implement, ready to question, ready to challenge, and ready to then go do the work. I want to be that. And then the last question I'm asking myself is, how can I be found, right? And a part of why I'm talking about this right now is me putting it out there that I could be found by a mentor who says, you, Dominic, right? Like, you're the guy that I want to see grow. There's something that I want to pour into you, and I want to watch you grow. But also, what are other ways that I can be found, right? By this wise elder or a collection of wise elders that see something in me that they want to grow, and that I can provide to them back through me following and heeding their guidance and building a different world than the one that they've lived in. So what guidance do I seek? How can I be a model mentee? How can I make myself found? These are questions I'm contemplating, meditating on, and journaling. Because I don't want anyone else who crosses over the age of 40, who crosses over the age of 20, who crosses over the age of 60, to look around at this world and say, I've given up on the hope of finding a leader or a mentor who can speak to me, who can show me the way. That should never be the case. There are too many great men out there who can provide this kind of service for one another. We just need to make ourselves seen and known. We need to ask for it too. And this is what I'm doing right now, is to ask for it. So if you have desired to find male mentorship in your life, to look up and find someone that you resonate with, I encourage you to join in reflecting on those same questions. I want to finish this episode by reading you a passage from the very end of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, where Robert Moore says, mature men need to admire other men, living and dead. We need especially to have contact with older men whom we can look up to. If such men are not available to us personally, then we need to read their biographies and become familiar with their words and their deeds. Napoleon Hill has been that man for me. Through all of his writings, his teaching, his lectures that you can find on Spotify and listen to for hours, which I've done many times over. He is a male mentor, a wise elder who is no longer living, but I've experienced extraordinary value and growth through his teachings, and many times it feels like he's just talking to me. And I've had the blessing of a Dean Richard Mateer, who came into my life at a time where I needed it the most. So I invite you to join me on this path that we're walking together, of finding those inspiring male mentors, those wise elders that can help lead us to the futures that we can't wait to live into. Hey, just a reminder that starting this Monday, May 4th, that week, we are moving from a daily podcast to a 3 days a week podcast, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The reason for that is because I'm taking some of the attention and the love and the commitment that I've put into the daily podcast, and I'm turning that towards how I can build community, exercises, workshops, programs to take you all to the next level. Those of you who are ready to do more inner work outside of just listening to the podcast, and ideally connecting with one another. And I've got some really cool ideas on how to do that. So that's going to require some extra time, energy, and attention. And it will also give you a chance to metabolize some of the episodes that we've put out over these last 6 weeks. Many of you are current and up to date, and many of you have a whole bunch to go back and listen to. And also, going back and re-listening to some of these episodes is an awesome way to deepen your learning. Because one of the things that I see in a man's personal development is he hasn't fully metabolized what he has learned. He's heard something intellectually, it's made sense, but then can't articulate it to another, can't necessarily see how he's implemented that in his life. This is an opportunity for you to go back and listen to some of your favorites over again so that you can continue to deepen your understanding in your work. So once again, Monday, May 4th, that week, we're moving to 3 days a week of the Great Man Within podcast, and we will never stop helping you discover and live the great man within you.